Hey, thanks so much for watching my YouTube channel. I'm totally pumped that you're here. And of course, I want you to subscribe because we have fantastic guests on this program, on our YouTube channel. And there's really cool stuff like Thursdays when we drop in our little teaching stuff. Short, very helpful, insightful, and relevant. You're going to apply this stuff. It's really, really good. And I'm stoked to introduce to you one of my favorite people, Susie Larson. Yay!
Yay! Good to be with you.
Totally good to be with you.
Yeah.
And Susie, you and I, we catch up and we're like, woo, but not everybody knows you, kind of. So can you give us a little bit of a biography, short thumbnail biography? So they're kind of familiar.
Absolutely. Well, let's see, a short one, huh? Okay. I was raised in a large family. And I was part of a denomination where I knew God was real, but I really didn't know Jesus was accessible. I had a sense of his presence as a young girl, and as a fifth of 7 kids, I was a real rule follower. And at the age of 9, I suffered some trauma at the hands of teenage boys, sexual trauma. At the age of 10, I was walking home from school and was jumped by a group of teenage boys and beat badly. And those were markers in my life. And I know we went from laughter to deep, but that is, I can't tell my story without telling that part of the story. And when these boys jumped me, and I was just a little 4-foot thing, and they were laughing wildly as they punched me and pulled fistfuls of hair out and kicked me in the stomach. And I'm screaming. And they walked away laughing. And I got up so jarred and so traumatized by that. And I heard in my ear, it wasn't audible, but it might as well have been, I can get to you anytime, anywhere, and God will never stop me. And so at that moment as a little girl, I knew God was real and I knew the devil was real. And I say all that to say, I believe this so strongly that the devil sees your potential long before you ever do. Because if you just want to look back at the first time you thought you weren't enough or knew you weren't enough or something happened to make you more self-aware than God-aware, that's the enemy going after something in you because your potential threat to him is so great that he wants to be a threat to you. And so all of that to say, I lived those young years, and really a lot of my young adult life with a lot of fear, a lot of bracing for impact. And you jump ahead as a young mom. I came to Christ in 8th grade, a really awesome way where God just met me out on a picnic table one night, and I didn't even know what I was actually saying, but just saying, I want to know more of you. I believe you're real. If there's more, reveal yourself to me. And I started to read the scriptures under my bed sheet with the flashlight, just, wanting to get to know who Jesus was. And so I came into marriage with a very passionate walk of faith. I knew I was saved, but I just didn't know I was loved. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of believers. And so I just transferred all my high performance, which I did in high school, gymnastics and athletics and singing and all those things I was striving to do is try to dig myself out of a hole because I felt that I was in this canyon of self-contempt and insecurity and fear. I mean, people saw me on the outside and saw someone who could achieve things, but on the inside, I was just a pile of contradictions. And so once I became a Christian, I just sort of transferred a lot of that striving into, serving on 5 committees and all that stuff, Sure. And during one of our pregnancies, I was in bed rest for about 6 months. And one day the docs let me get up to test the waters. And met some girlfriends from college. We went for a walk. I was back in bed that night contracting. And 2 weeks out of that time, my face started to go numb. And it would take a year to find out that I was unknowingly bit by the deer tick and contracted Lyme's. And so that's heavy, I know, but that is such a big part of my story that I spent those early years as a mama, army crawling through the valley. And I was so new in my faith that when my face would go numb, and as a young 20, 30-something, my short-term memory started to go, and our medical debt was going up to the roof while my energy was plummeting, I didn't know where God was. I didn't know if he lost my address. And I didn't actually know that that was a training time that God was preparing me for a purpose. And right in the middle of all that, where I stopped having vision and passion and dreams for my life because I really was I just pray I can live long enough to see my kids grow up. It was just more survival. And right in the middle of that, a woman called from my church and she said, I've been listening to the chatter about you. Because some were gossiping because the crisis lasted so long, and others were feeling bad for us. And so she said, I wanted to know for myself, what is going on with this family? And she said, I brought your case before the Lord. And she said, you listen to me. She said, Susie Larson, God showed me a platform that he's building with your pain that you'll speak from someday. So lean in and learn everything you can, because you'll have a story to tell. And it was a truth bomb moment. It dropped into my soul. And Sarah, I needed that because I got worse before I got better. You know, it was like the enemy unleashed his fury on me. And but I knew something now. It was like, and in that place, after I hung up, it was the Lord just spoke to my heart and said, Susie, are you a believer just because you've secured your eternity, or do you actually believe the stuff that I've written in my word? I mean, when are you going to shift your way down to the promises to see if they'll hold? And that was a turning point for me in my faith, where I just started to go, you know what, the anchor holds, and I'm going to trust that he is going to redeem my story somehow, some way. And so that is that's my story, that's my song, and there's so much more to it, but all of that to say, if there's something that is kind of threaded through everything I write and speak and do, is the idea that he loved us first of all. It's not that we loved God, but that he loved us, and he loves us first every single day. And to know this love is what changes everything. But two, that we have to contend for some of these promises. We can't passively be on the mat for 38 years like the man in the Gospels and just sort of wait. We need to rise up. We need to be able to answer the question, do you want to get well? Or what do you want me to do for you, right? And to really embrace the promises that God is issuing to us, because our story isn't just about us. It's about so many other people and our sphere of influence. So I do have a lot of passion. I do have a lot of fight in my spirit. I still struggle daily with symptoms. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, it seems, but I've come a long way. But I love him more than I've ever loved him before, and I want to see people healed, and I want to see people mobilized into their calling. I think the thing that gets me out of bed every day is getting people ready to meet Jesus. If you're lost, I want you found. If you're found, but you're not living out your purposes because you don't know who you are, you're believing a lie, I want you positioned in a way where you just know that you know you're someone God loves, and since you're a masterpiece, you're someone he's called as well.
And to that end, part of the way you express that is, one, you got radio, right? So how much do you do radio stuff-wise?
My radio is probably my main thing right now. So, I mean, radio's first. I'm writing books second, and I do speak, but I keep that on a very short leash. I say no more often than yes, just because of the cost. It's, when you travel, it disrupts the apple cart for me physically. It takes me a long time to recover. We're still out. Pre-COVID, we were out more probably than my physical body wanted to be, and this break has actually been very precious for me, and I'm really rethinking how much of that I'm supposed to be doing. But I work 3/4 time in radio, so I have a lot of time that goes into that, and then I'm about ready to start another book. So that's what.
So we can listen to you on radio. Where can we find you on radio?
So I'm a part of a radio network in the Upper Midwest. We also have a station in Connecticut. myfaithradio.com is the website, but we have a free app so you can live stream from everywhere. And what's amazing is we give away resources every single day. In fact, you're one of my guests next week. I'm super excited about that. But we once our live show is over, it goes to podcast, and our podcast listenership for some reason has exploded all over the world, and they don't even know we're a radio station, so they think it's just a podcast, but whatever, I don't care. But what an amazing medium to communicate the love of God, to bring people on like you and other great leaders to speak to the issues of our day, to help mobilize people. And I just love so much that's a filter for me, the deeper life, powerful life. I'm looking for guests to kind of fit into that lane, to go help people know God's love and help people know that they're called.
I'll never forget the first interview I did with you. And it was when I did the book called Heavenly Help. And I'd kind of heard of you, but I didn't know anything. And I'll never forget that interview. I was sitting in my car waiting to pick up my kids. And it was like a little bit ahead of time, so I was like, you got to not be driving to
Save it for that.
Exactly. And I remember talking, and just the conversation that we had. The interview was like real natural, real easy, and I was like, because some people, when you talk about Holy Spirit, it can be kind of a touchy subject for some people, right? But I loved your questions. I loved the engagement. I loved the connection with that. And I was like, like of all the interviews that I did, I was like, you were my favorite interview.
Wow.
I know. And I was like, she does, this chick is like the real deal.
Wow.
I mean, I was like, just totally like, this is phenomenal. And so that was kind of the starting point in terms of like connecting with you. And I'll never forget. I remember exactly where I was parked. I remember like getting done. I was like, wow, that was incredible. And so from that point on, it's been important to me to stay connected and just to at least keep touch a little bit, and text here and there.
I feel like I need to say this as I had no formal training in radio, and I think someone might need to hear this today because, I started out as a speaker, and back then I was so sick. I was speaking at MOPS groups and retreats. This was many, many years ago, and then I started to write, and I was author speaker, so to speak, and I was on a media tour, and I was in a studio as the guest. And I'm talking to the host, and she's talking to me while she's cueing the producer, and something leapt within my heart. And I was in fitness for 15 years, so when you teach group fitness classes, you are basically executing one move while you're cueing the next. You're doing a grapevine, going over the step. You're telling people what to do And with radio, I'm watching these hosts. They're talking to me, but they're cueing the producer. Now, I'm an introvert. I have speaker friends who love the attention, who love the crowds, and that exhausts me. It's just the truth. And it was interesting. I say this to say, pay attention to the quickening in your spirit, because I noticed something happen to me when I was in that studio. And then the next time, it jumped again. And I'm like, Lord, I think I might want to do that. Now, if this is a self-ambitious goal, take it out of me. But if this is something you're awakening in me, I'm listening, I'm paying attention. Well, every time after that, I would do an in-studio interview, Sarah, it was all I could do not to bump her off her seat and to go, I want to ask a few questions here. And I'm like, Lord, oh my goodness, Lord, you've got to, and in due time, I was walking out of our local station where I work now, and this was over 15 years ago, and the producer said, you're a natural behind the mic. Would you ever? And I'm like, yes. I didn't know what she was even going to ask me. I thought she could ask me to lunch, and I was going to be, yes. Sure. And she said, would you be a backup guest host? So I was a backup guest host for 4 years. Now, I want you to hear this. Every time I would go in, so I was still author speaker and doing this on the side. Every time I would go in, I'd be in, let's say I hadn't slept the night before, I was having symptoms, and I would get to interview someone. Something would come alive in me. And it got to the point where I'm like, Lord, you either got to take this away from me or you got to give me my own show. And 2 years in, there was an opening, and I applied, and someone else got it. And yet I knew the Lord wasn't releasing me. He's like, serve, come underneath this, learn everything you can. So for 4 years, I was a guest host. And then the door opened, and then things sort of went from there. And I remember when the opportunity came, there were a number of author friends, different editors and agent friends who were saying, if you step into this, you will kill your writing career. And I said, first of all, I don't see it as a career, it's a ministry. But wisdom's path is peace to me. The peace of God is what reigns supreme. And so if it means I have to let go of that to lay hold of this, I'll do that. And one of my girlfriends said, Susie, you're a deeper life girl. And she said, I don't see this as a contradiction to what you're doing over here. She said, you care about deeper life conversations. She goes, so what if you're on the other side of the mic? She said, to me, it's like in the revival tent, you're just holding a different pole. So go forward and trust God. And Sarah, I've written more books since I worked in radio than I wrote before, and I think they're better, I mean, just even craft-wise, because of the press on my time. I've had to have an economy of words. I had no training, and I had a lot of people saying this thing in my ear. And I want to say that because I think somebody might be watching today who has a quickening in their hearts, but it doesn't make sense to them. But that's where you trust in the Lord with all your heart. You say, Lord, with all my heart, I trust you. I'm not going to lean on my own understanding. And you are going to, I'm going to acknowledge you. You're going to make my path straight because it fits who I am. And people have said to me before, I don't know what box to put you in, you know? And I'm like, I'm just me, right? And I feel like the same with you. You know, it's like a hybrid ministry. You do this, but that needs to be okay in this day. And I just think God is raising people up in very unique ways. It makes no sense when people ask me, what kind of education do you have for radio? And I'm like, the school of suffering. So I just think maybe someone needed to hear that today.
And along that line, too, I just kind of feel this in my heart, too. In Revelations, I think it's 3, verse 8, it says, I open a door for you that no man can close. And I think that as well for some of the people watching today, listening, that God opens doors and waiting for God to open the doors and being attentive to. And I had a conversation with somebody earlier this morning. The doors that God opens, no man can close. But if God closes a door, hey, stop banging your head against the wall.
Amen.
Because seriously. So I think that's really important. So Susie, how many books have you written?
17. I'm just about to start 18.
Nice,
so, yeah.
nice.
Pray for me, because I mean, I'm this every time, as you know, when you write a book, you walk through it. And but anyway, yes.
And each book is distinct.
Yes.
The experience is unique.
Yes.
It's like having a baby.
Indeed. Very
and
much.
It's a pregnancy, and it's like, okay, what's this one like?
Indeed.
And it's fun. I'll totally pray. Totally pray.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being honest and vulnerable. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So thank you for watching. Of course, hit the notification button right there so you can keep getting notifications when we put up new content. Thank you for subscribing. And I'd like to ask you this question. What door would you like God to open for you? Doesn't mean necessarily once you say it, doesn't mean that God totally does that. Because sometimes I've asked God, open this door, and God doesn't. You're like, well, just be persistent. Sometimes I think that's true. But let's think about the door that you want God to open. And maybe God would open it in ways that you didn't necessarily anticipate or expect, but let God be in charge of the method, but maybe just identify what's the door. So thank you again for watching, subscribing, all that. And of course, we have to finish with a fantastic joke. I say tongue-in-cheek because these jokes are a little sketchy. Hey, why can't you play poker in the jungle? You can't play poker in the jungle because there are too many cheetahs.
I did not laugh.
So great. Oh my gosh. Catch you next week.